Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 podcast. I am Joel A. Erickson. I am joined, as always, by Nate Atkins. This is maybe the most first impression-y of the first impression podcasts that we're going to have. We are leaving NRG Stadium right now. Nate is driving. We're headed to the airport, trying to get back. And the Colts lose today, 23-20. I feel like, though, this game feels bigger than a 23-20 loss just because of it felt like the Anthony Richardson conversation. Just being honest, this is us. Like I said, this is a first impressions podcast. We're coming out of it really quick. It has changed just a little bit today. Just in terms of he finished 10 of 32. It was another passing performance that was not great, but on top of that, he also tapped his helmet and came out for a play when he was that I think people are going to be talking. People are already talking about that. I don't need to think. People are definitely going to be talking about that. Oh, yeah. And really, this is the first game that I feel like the defense really did its job in terms of what it gave up, and the offense just never came through for them. Especially like in the last two drives, they get the improbable stop from Daiwo Dangbo. Like they needed a miracle inside the 20, and he gives it to them, and they go 3 and out immediately. And then they get another shot with a minute left, and that drive really didn't go that well either. They don't never get the pass off on the Hail Mary. Plus, you felt like, I don't know, there's some other stuff going on there, but it just felt to me like when you look at this game, maybe more than any other, this one falls at the feet of Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen, which leads to questions going forward.
Yeah, I feel like we're already tapping into our villains of the game. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in general, it's like there have been other games. In some ways, this played out similarly to other losses where they're trying to come back in the fourth quarter from 2 scores down, they lose by a score. But other games, especially at that first one against the Texans, it felt more like the defense put them in that hole and they couldn't quite dig all the way back. They gave up all those rushing yards in week 1. And that didn't feel like the defense set them up for success. And this one they did. Now, some of it, there's different reasons for it. Stephon Diggs got hurt in an offense that was already missing Nico Collins for the Texans. So there's that. But like the Colts were getting off the field when they had to, including, when they had to punt it back there at the end, they still gave them another shot. They got that turnover from Daiwo Dangbo, like you mentioned. Like they made enough plays to give them a chance. And the Colts were able to get one nice touchdown drive, the one that tapped off with Jonathan Taylor's touchdown. But from there, the rest of that was just kind of a failure in scheme, design, passing, efficiency, accuracy. All of it just came to light like it did at many different parts in the middle of the game. And even early in the game when it felt like Anthony Richardson was actually kind of on, he was pretty on at the first drive. Just nothing is coming together for a team that wants to live in its worst ways right now. Its worst abilities at the moment are dropping back and throwing with the youngest starting quarterback, with a banged-up Michael Pittman Jr., and other stuff we'll get into. But it does feel like the conversations grew loud with Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen because it's another game of this, and yet not much, I don't know, like self-awareness, I guess, of what the problem is and how to go about fixing it and what needs to be different. It seems like they just want to keep going at it and doing this and that everything's fine, and they just came up a little bit short when they're the reasons they came up short today. And that is just glaring when that happened in this game where they had a chance to, pull into a tie for the AFC South at the start of this hard stretch, going up against another young quarterback and second-year head coach who are bringing the things that they were supposed to bring to put their team in a position to win a second straight division title. It just became that much more glaring that there's so long way to go with this potentially. But as of right now, there's a big gap between what the Texans head coach and quarterback and what this team is doing when they're both banking on pillars at the same positions.
Villain of the game, I think we can just jump right into this. I think we can break down along our storylines here. We haven't written them yet because we're just getting out of the stadium, but we will. Villain of the game for me is Anthony Richardson. They 10 of 32, is that right?
Yep.
10 of 32, a really bad interception. Like you can't throw the interception. His explanation for the interception after the game also felt weird to me. He said like they were expecting a look, they didn't get that look. Josh was really the only player open, And so he tried to get it to him, and then Petrie just made a play. But, like, you can't make that play there. You just can't. Like, you can't let a ball get picked off because DeForest Buckner being Buck, he after the game, he was like, we can't give up a touchdown in that situation. You're not supposed to have to face the Texans with the ball in the 7.
A 7-yard drive.
You know, that's I was watching this is where it gets first impression even. I was watching the Wisconsin Penn State game on the plane yesterday, and that was how Wisconsin lost, was their quarterback made an ill-advised throw inside his own 20, and it completely turned a game that the Badgers were winning. Like, you don't have to throw the ball. You could run. You could fall down and take the sack. You could throw it way over their heads. Like, I don't know. You could do a lot of stuff and not put the ball in harm's way. That interception was bad. Also, there's other plays in here that I think have gotten a little bit lost. The fumble on the exchange, which my understanding is that that's the quarterback. It's not the running back. It's the quarterback's job to either give it or pull it and make sure nothing happens to it.
Yeah.
That took them out of field goal range. They lost by a field goal. Matt Gay's hit his last like 7 or 8 or something like that. Like, they a field goal. That was a big play. There was a ton of times in the first half. I know for sure they had 4 3-and-outs in the first half. The defense did, or no, they had 3 3-and-outs and a 5-and-out where the Texans punted, and the Colts just kept giving them the ball back right away. Like, the defense was playing well enough, and they weren't getting it. And so much of that was Richardson not completing passes. Now, the first 5 passes I felt like were pretty good. Maybe the first 7. He had some PBUs there. Like, the accuracy was there. It's hard to know on the reads if they're the right reads or not. One of them, his first one to Pittman, was late because he was stepping up in the pocket. I did think that the Colts did a poor job of protection today. There was a lot of blitz issues like there were last week, stuff like that. They didn't necessarily help Richardson, but you also still want to see more from him. 10 for 32 is just not a number you see in the NFL anymore. It's got to be better than that. And I mean, I think we can probably get into this. I don't want to talk too much, but like, I'll let you go into this. But like, also some of his answers, as I alluded to, for stuff that happened in the game, kind of weird after the game.
Yeah, it was a bad mix of a lot of things for Anthony today, which is the accuracy, which is something we've seen consistently. What I've said is I think they have to be willing to live with some misses in accuracy in terms of like the completion percentage not being great, so long as they're doing 2 other things, which is getting some explosive plays and mostly protecting the ball. The turnovers were rough, and that fumble, like, they recovered it, but they're out of field goal position, like you said. That was like 10-point swings on turnovers right there, in turnovers that just shouldn't happen. They weren't just like great plays on defense. They were just plays that should not have been put in danger. And then the explosiveness, I mean, it's one thing to be 10 of 30. I mean, there's no way 10 of 32 is going to be good, but he still was at 5.5 yards an attempt.
Only two explosive throws
with one
both to down.
So he had one that was 69 yards to downs. That was a nice design that busted him open, and he was wide open and took it in. They had 106 passing yards in the other 31 attempts,
and one of them was 24 yards. One of them was the other pass. The other pass to Downs was 24.
Yeah, so Downs provided all of that. It was like they tried these explosive plays downfield, and it's just not working. And so, Anthony's, it's a mix of some bad things where it's like they're not staying accurate. They're not staying on the field when they need to. Too many 3-and-outs still, but also trying to get to the airport and people are being a little crazy. Yeah, it was a really bad game from Anthony, and like you said, with his answers, it's kind of what made it worse. It's like a lot of what we've been saying on this podcast is even though there's some struggles with him, it's a situation where like he's got to go through this and learn the right lessons. And so, when he comes out and he says, number one, he needed a breather, on a play near the goal line, that is not speaking to a player that is working through those concerns about toughness and all of that, durability. I mean, there were a lot of other good moments for him in this game as far as that storyline of taking hits and living to extend the play and all of that. But that undermined a lot of it. And then the answer where he said, I'm a great passer, I know he's trying to be he's defensive right now. A lot of the narratives that are quickly forming about him, and he gave other comments that I thought were more accurate about how he's a different style of quarterback. He's built more as a runner than a passer at this moment. Michael Vick started this way. But to come out and say I'm a great passer right now, that's not getting at the point, which is you're not good enough to play this way right now. And it's something I think he and Shane Steichen are not realizing, which is why Shane Steichen is my villain of the day, is that I do not understand how you come into this game off of what went on last week. When you get Jonathan Taylor back, you're facing a Texans defense that lives in the too high safety shell. And Jonathan Taylor has always ripped up the Texans and did it again today for 100 yards. And the Texans are missing their top 2 linebackers. And yet they threw on their first 5 plays. They ran I think they had 7 runs by halftime and more than double passes when they had only completed 2 passes. Just another game where Shane wanted to live with this philosophy he has, which is throw to score, run to win. But what happens when you can't throw to score? And that's what was going on in this game. They got one explosive play to Josh Downs. And again, I'm not saying you run every play. You do want to find some moments to go after that. But it's like when he gets one of those, he thinks he can dial that up all the time. And that's what led to that calling that play that was the pick at the end of the first half. And Shane's defense of it was, well, we're trying to be aggressive. And it's almost like everything gets passed off as okay. As long as you try to be aggressive, it's okay if you're terrible. And that's not a good enough answer right now. That's not a good enough solution for the way this team is built, where you have the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL, a guy who is completing probably something around 45% of his passes right now after what this game ended up being. You have your number 1 receiver is really hobbled out there with this back injury. You don't have tight ends who catch the football. You don't have running backs who catch the football. And so it's like if you weren't scheming something to get Josh Downs open or find the occasional explosive play down the field, Alec Pierce, you're asking Anthony to drop back again and again and connect with guys he's barely thrown to, who are not meant to be the guys to engineer the important plays. And the number of times that he dropped back and on a fairly important down through to a Kylan Granson or Will Mallory or Tyler Goodson or Trey Sermon or A.D. Mitchell, who we know is super talented, but I don't know how you can look at that connection between Anthony and A.D. Mitchell and say that's what's going to save us on some of these third down red zone plays. And it just keeps happening again and again where it's almost like Shane's trying to prove, hey, my throw to score philosophy works, or hey, I can microwave Anthony Richardson into a suddenly accurate and great passer. Whereas what you could do is lean on Jonathan Taylor, which is why they paid him more than all but 2 running backs in football, why they rested him to get him back for this game. Or you could design some runs for Anthony Richardson, who, to his own admission, is he thinks he's better as a runner than everyone, but maybe Lamar Jackson, he said. And I don't actually think he's necessarily wrong about that. He's just not proven, and we're not seeing it out there very much. I think they had 2 design runs for him. They seem to want to the second half, like, oh, we'll use it only when we have to win the game. But if you're down 2 scores because the passing plays you're drawing up early on are going that poorly, you're not going to put him in enough positions to get there. And then they did it so much in one moment that Anthony Richardson all of a sudden is tired and has to come out of the game, and leads us to some of these tough narratives. So I just think those are 2 very fitting villains in this game, because Anthony's not hitting the throws, and his coach is asking him to drop back and hit those throws, when everything else about how the general manager and front office have built this team through the offensive line, blocking tight ends, superstar running back, mobile quarterback has been about the run game, and they just don't want to play that way. And if they don't want to play through the run game, I don't see how they can be very competitive against really good teams in this year of defense, which is a lot of too high shells.
Yeah, I just keep thinking we brought this up right before we got in the car. I brought this up right before we got in the car. I was gonna say, like Jalen Hurts, he didn't have somebody like this. He ran Jalen Hurts a lot.
Yeah, almost 10 times a game.
Yeah, he ran Jalen Hurts a lot in ways that they're not running at Richardson. Like it's beyond like worrying about the injury risk anymore. Like you got to do something to make him successful, and I just don't feel like they're doing a lot to make him successful right now. I'm gonna move to unsung villain. We're gonna throw something in here. I'm gonna make it one play for the first time ever. Anthony Richardson tapping his helmet to go out. I don't know how to put this other than just say this doesn't happen.
So you're giving your villain and your unsung villain at the same time.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how to. There's parts of this, and we're gonna try to talk through it real quickly because we gotta get through the rest of the categories. But there's parts of this I understand. Like, he did run around a lot. He had a ridiculous escape and got back to the line of scrimmage on the play before. He took a hard fall. He had run around a lot on those plays. I don't know how to put this other than to say you just don't see quarterbacks tap out.
Yeah.
I talked to DeForest Buckner after the game. Somebody else asked him about that play. Buckner said he had to feel like something was serious if he came out on that play. And Richardson himself said he was tired.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably going to be made more of than maybe it actually matters in the grand scheme of things. But it is something we need to talk about because, again, and I want to stress this as much as possible, I can't remember another time where this has happened with another quarterback.
No. I mean, you see running quarterbacks all the time. Like we said, Jalen Hurts did this almost 10 times a game with Shane Steichen. And I just haven't heard of it either. I covered a year where Matthew Stafford just got beaten to a pulp. And, to play where he's not getting checked by the trainers, there's no even injury risk going on. It was weird. I mean, I do buy that he did run crazily for a couple plays there. But here's the thing is that even if, once in a while there is a moment where it's like your quarterback is a little winded as a runner, so you're not going to run him in that spot again. But the next play they handed it off. He can't hand the ball off.
Well, Joe Flacco did it, and Joe Flacco is famously not very mobile. So
yeah. So I don't. He couldn't have stayed in to hand the ball off. They could have taken a timeout. But yeah, I mean, on Anthony's part, it's not going to help. A lot of what's going on here when he's not playing well is trying to establish himself as the right leader, the right person to bet on as far as what he's laying on the line and what he's able to work through. And I think that play was a tough step back. At least it just is. It is not a good. It's not a good sign for him right now. So for my unsung villain, I'm going to go with the offensive line for the Colts. So it was a weird game where and they were a victim of this too, where I think if they'd leaned into the run and they'd been able to play more downhill, we would have seen them to their strengths a little bit better. I probably wouldn't be putting them as the unsung villain right now, but I am, because when the game fell on them a lot late in the game, I'm thinking right after Dio Adengbo got that fumble, they just fell apart. I mean, they completely fell apart, where Quentin Nelson had 3 false starts in this game.
Yeah.
That is adding up, and some of them are just coming at some really bad times. Bernard Ryman got really badly beaten on an inside move.
First bad game of the year for him. I think he gave up 2 sacks.
Yeah, inside move.
Really bad game.
From Daniil Hunter. Some of the pressure was dialing up blitzes, but it wasn't all that. They didn't blitz as much. Texas didn't blitz as much as the Dolphins did. They just won more of these matchups up front. So that's how the Texans are built. They went out and they outbid the Colts. Needed to be able to answer that better. And Anthony didn't even get that last Hail Mary off because the pressure was so instantaneous in a moment where that's usually not the issue on a Hail Mary. It's you got to let Anthony Richardson have a chance to launch that ball down the field with his arm strength, with Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr.'s ability to go up and high point the ball. And I just thought they crumbled at some of the absolute worst moments. And again, the team's built around them. And so Anthony, he's a rightful villain. He had a terrible game in the way he handled it. But this is where there's situationally, I don't think the Colts helped him out a lot today either. And that was one of them. As the final 2 drives, you have got to be locked in pass pro. And I thought they were just at their absolute worst at the most critical times.
It's still early. I haven't seen what the pressure rates were, but I know Stephen Holder from ESPN said at the half that Richardson was at 75% pressure rate. He got sacked 5 times today. It's a lot for him. It's a lot for him. So, and that's with several very nice escapes in there too. So there's a significant issue. I think offensive line's a good one. We're going to move on to hero of the game. Hero of the game for me is going to be Dio Adengbo. 3 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, a sack, and an incredible play when the defense absolutely needed it. They'd struggled. They were giving up yards. They were about to give up either maybe a touchdown to seal the game or a field goal that would put the Colts in a touchdown or bust situation. And Odengbo recognized something in the formation, is what he told me. So there was some knowledge to be gained there. Recognized something in the formation, splits the defender or the blockers, goes in the backfield, and just rips the ball away from Joe Mixon. And doesn't hear a whistle. He kind of knew that he was probably down. He kind of knew he was contacted, but takes off. It would have been a great touchdown if it had happened, but I think it's probably the right call. But just Odengbo has gotten caught up, I think, in a little bit of just what they've been missing on the defensive line, that kind of thing. But he led the team in pressures coming in, had a huge game today, and I think he deserves it just from a pass rush that really did end up keeping this game close. The Texans, they really only had one real scoring drive for a touchdown because the other one was gifted them by Steichen and Richardson.
Yeah, Dio got right back to it where they've been playing him at defensive end out of necessity and not getting, they want to move him inside of passing downs, and in pass games they haven't put him in that situation. So he hasn't flashed his high end output, which is when he's rushing inside. Today they got back to more of that. That was the matchup they had to win against a massively struggling interior, the Texans offensive line, and so he did that, and I'll throw in just to throw him in there, DeForest Buckner. I thought the two of them just wrecking the middle.
Is this
of that
your
Texans
hero or
line.
your unsung hero?
Neither one. I'm just throwing him into yours, just to make sure I'm not ignoring him. But my unsung hero of the game, I should say, is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor came back and was Jonathan Taylor yet again. He had 105 yards today. Again, there were some missing defenders for the Texans, but that's become a very good run defense that he went out there and again had his way with. He just kind of owns this matchup outside of just one game the last time they played. 20 carries, 105 yards, and a touchdown. Also took a screen pass for 12 yards. So for this offense, for him to have 112 yards, pretty good efficiency was important. And there were a lot of plays that you could feel his ability being the reason that it happened. Like a lot more of his start and stop kind of play. There's a moment where he carried defenders for a first down. His ability to get to the perimeter and turn what would have, a play we've seen them run with Tyler Goodson or Trey, a lot of with Trey Sermon that would only, even when it's blocked pretty well, 4 yards, he would turn that into a first down run. When they were completing so few passes, that was so critical to getting first downs in making some of these drives happen. So Jonathan Taylor, I thought, it's on one hand, it's great that the Colts got Taylor and Buckner back for this game because you saw just how awesome those two players are. And that's what's also so frustrating, that you got kind of the peak levels of both of them and still didn't end up winning the game.
Who was your hero of the game?
Oh.
Nate's driving. He didn't realize.
Okay, I'll do both of those. I'll do DeForest Buckner hero, Jonathan Taylor unsung hero. Jonathan Taylor, he gets the unsung just because, not to his fault, but they didn't use him until kind of late in the game. It didn't end up kind of doing the heroic things. I thought DeForest Buckner, though, his ability to just walk guards back into the quarterback. He got a left guard bench today in like the second quarter, and then they had to put him back in because of a brain injury to his backup. So DeForest Buckner got to just kind of eat in that matchup, and I thought that was the reason that in the middle of the game the Colts weren't getting blown out when they threw that pick. Texans get an easy touchdown. Like, this could have turned into a rout right away, and so the fact that the Colts had a chance at the end, it's credit to their defense. I think it's largely credit to that interior rush and DeForest Buckner's ability to make big plays on C.J. Stroud, to keep him from scrambling, even have a chance to scramble out on some of these plays to find his receivers downfield. That's the reason they stayed in the game was Dio and DeForest Buckner.
Yeah, Buckner's presence. I mean, the Texans have a really bad offensive line. I don't think there's any two ways about that. It's a really bad offensive line. But DeForest Buckner being back was clearly a difference maker for them. My unsung hero of the game is going to be Josh Downs. They kind of schemed him open. Alec Pierce probably deserves a big assist on the first touchdown play, but he still made a catch, still ran away from everybody. And then the 24-yard catch that got them on the inch line, that's just an incredible catch. That play was supposed to go to Pierce. Richardson decides to go to Downs instead. He gives him a pretty decent ball, but Downs has to go get it, hauls it in, somehow keeps it through the ground. Only 4 catches for 109 yards today. I think everyone would probably agree they need to emphasize Downs a little bit more. Richardson, honestly, they need to emphasize Downs a little bit more, but Richardson has to hit Downs on some of those short plays. I think the worst miss he had of the day, the most egregious, just flat miss, not decision or anything like that, was on a in-breaking route to Downs that in the press box they actually announced it was to Mo Alley Cox. And it should have been probably a first down to Josh Downs. So Downs is my unsung hero. That brings us to number of the day. Try to roll through these pretty quick. Number of the day. Do you have anything off the top of your head?
I do. Which is going to be my number today is 1, which is the number of games Anthony Richardson has completed more than 10 passes this season.
That's wild.
That was against the Packers, which that was not exactly a banner passing day. So they've won a couple games when he's done that against the Bears and last week against the Dolphins. But just one game where he's completed more than 10 passes today. Again, 10 completions, but on 32 attempts. So that kind of sums up just where they're at right now. Just the struggles of accuracy, the amount that they hunt for these explosive plays. And again, when it's 9 of 19 and the yards per attempt are crazy in the first game, that's something you can win with. When it's 10 of 32 and only 2 explosive pass plays, that's not what you want. And that kind of sums up why they're just not doing enough as a passing offense to be good teams right
now. My number of the day is going to be, where is it? I'm looking for it. It was going to be 5, but that's not very fun. I want the Colts yards per drop back. Average gain per pass play for the Colts today, 3.8. 3.8. I don't even need to say anything. 3.8. That is.
And consider they had a 69-yard pass.
Yeah, that is 3.8 is a number that defies explanation. I think it actually gets worse, though. I'll give you a bonus number of the day. See if I can find this. They average 17.5 yards per completion. 3.8 yards per dropback, 17.5 yards per completion. That is, there's nothing to say.
We're just wondering how you get to that math. It's 5 sacks and 22 incompletions.
Yeah, that is. I would love to know if that's like the biggest discrepancy we've seen in a while. That'll be my editor will look at it later probably. He likes to look up that kind of stuff. Game day observation. Do you have a game day observation from today?
I do. It's very strange. So I'm going to go to the same well as last week last week I pointed out a kind of weird version of a Peyton Manning jersey. I'd never seen one that was in black and white that looked like a Raiders one. I saw another thing like that, except even weirder. I was in the airport to fly out here, and I saw a guy who had bought a Peyton Manning jersey, but used tape to cover up the 8 on both sides so that he could write Pat McAfee's name over Peyton Manning's name. And first of all, it seems like a really strange way to treat the best player in franchise history. But number 2, why didn't you just buy the Pat McAfee jersey if that's what you're going for? Surely it's not any more expensive than the Peyton Manning jersey to get a McAfee one. I think this person was also wearing pajamas at the time. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. But that was a vexed moment.
That's pretty confusing. My game day observation, people don't come to Texans games.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Like, they've got these big parking lots right next to the stadium. It should be perfect for tailgating. They don't even fill up until right before kickoff. There were a bunch of seats out there. Like, I said this out loud in the press box, and I'll say it out loud to you guys. I would love to know from a Houston native, are there more Texans fans or Cowboys fans in Houston still after all this time? And
Fair question.
that's not taking anything away from the Texans. They're 6-2. They've got CJ Stroud, blah, 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 AFC South titles. Who's watching? Why are there empty seats? You have CJ Stroud.
And it's a divisional game. I mean,
against a team that was 4-3. I know they don't look like they're 4-4, but they are. Like, it's just weird.
It tells you just they're not popular compared to other teams because it's not like the state doesn't love football.
No, state adores football.
So it's not like there's some markets like that are just like non-football areas. It's not the team that they want between the Cowboys being in the state and so many college options. It is very strange though, because it is exactly what I think a lot of fan bases are dying for, which is a good young coach and an exciting young quarterback in a first place team.
3 football things that gave me joy, 3 football things that left Nate terribly vexed. Again, we're going to try to go through these fairly quick. Number 1 football thing that gave me joy, a successful option. Love the option. I grew up in Wisconsin. I played a bunch of option offenses. My job was to stop them. I still like it. And the Colts ran one to perfection. Josh Downs got 13 yards on it. Weirdly, the NFL decided not to give him a carry, which your yards per carry are confusing if you have 13 yards but no carries, because that's 13 divided by 0, which is 0, but it's actually 13. It's very confusing. Anyway, I love options.
I finally saw an option in a game, and I can't use it as a vexing because it was well done and it was good skill sets, and it was not just your traditional speed option. It was something a little bit more stretched out and possible to get a good play than that. First football thing that left me terribly vexed is something you touched on with Dio Adengba, but when a player has to run, a big guy has to run that far down the field when he already knows that he was touchdown, like he had to do it just because they hadn't blown the whistle, and there's a 2% chance that that they end up looking at that and saying, it does count as a touchdown, but it's like weird energy to be like, in what is a play that defensive lineman never gets to run. He's gassed down there. Like, you want to run that for, you want it to pay off. And he's in the moment knowing this is coming back, but I guess I'll try and sell it on something I never get to do anyway. So just an odd moment.
Number 2 football thing that gave me joy. We'll go to the same play Nate just talked about. I love it when a defender rips the ball away from a guy in midair as they're going down. Love it. It might not be exactly what happened, but by the time Dio landed, he had the football. When he hit him, he didn't have the football. The awareness to do that. He said, he gave a little grin and was like, I played some offense back in the day. Realistically, I think that's just being athletic and being aware and grabbing it away. Love it when a guy pulls the ball away. Kind of wish he hadn't been down, because then I could have added a big man touchdown to my football things that gave me joy.
Yeah, I'm glad you say big man, because normally it's like you would consider his position like fat guy touchdown.
No, not fat.
You cannot describe Dio
too tall.
as fat.
Too tall.
He's large, but it's like he and DeForest Buckner are a little differently cut. Second football thing that left me terribly vexed is when an official uses a big explanation for something that needs no explanation, which he did with the touchback on one of the dynamic kickoffs that he said, grabs the mic and says, by NFL rule, the ball must be placed in 25. And I just started thinking, like, why'd you stop there? Why can't you tell us by NFL rule all the other basic things that are going on? By NFL rule, after an interception, the other team gets the ball. by NFL rule, 2nd and 9 means they need 9 yards to get a first down. Like,
I'm going to briefly add to this. The Colts got the ball back with a second left at the end of the game, and the ref said by rule. And they didn't explain it.
Oh yeah,
that was the time we needed it. I needed it. What was the rule? You guys who are watching the broadcast probably know. We still don't know.
We were like, what rule is there that lets you have an extra second when they're not?
Yeah. Number 3 football thing that gave me joy: kickoff returns that matter. The kickoff return is when it used to be done. It was an exciting play. There were big kickoff returns. The first 2 kickoff returns in this game went for big yardage. Ashton Doolin had a very nice one for the Colts. The Colts blew contain on another one for the Texans. They set up the first 2 field goals. Next year, I would like them to make the touchback to the 35-yard line so that there's more kickoff return chances and more chances for big returns, because they're fun when they happen.
They are. It usually, like, I don't even watch those plays very often right now because they never get returned. Now I saw them running out and I was like, wow, a real play. So the third and final football thing that left me terribly vexed, since I always try to throw a play call in here, just got to go back to the pick at the end of the first half where you have 23 seconds left and you're throwing like a 4-yard play where if you convert it, your big payoff is you have first and 10 from your own 15 with what, 23 seconds?
Yeah.
Like there's no payoff. It's like all the risk in the world for absolutely zero payoff. So it's like I can't even say you're getting too aggressive for explosive plays. It's just like you're just trying to give the ball away at that point. That's kind of how that felt.
That brings us to the more important things. Colts lose today, so this is going to be too much blame, too little blame. We will start with too little blame. Who's getting too little blame for today's loss?
Good question. I think we it's certainly not our villains. So
I'm going to go to receivers.
Okay.
There wasn't a ton of separation early. There was a drop by Will Mallory. This is receivers, tight ends. People on the receivers, not in the positional term, in the sense of on the end of Anthony Richardson's passes. Will Mallory dropped. Tyler Goodson dropped. Alec Pierce had a weird one. He probably should catch it. Like, I also think if he caught it there, the clock might have run out. So, I don't know. Just not a lot of help for Anthony Richardson from his receivers outside of Josh Downs today, I felt like.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good one. I guess I'm going to go with the Colts linebackers.
Good one.
Just another game that wasn't very good from them. Like they didn't get completely trucked like the first matchup, but again, they probably weren't going to with this current state of this Texans offensive line, where they had another couple injuries in the middle of that line, and then the Colts are able to play the run better because there's no Nico Collins out there the Texans have no explosiveness, so it's very easy to condense the field on them, and you just got to make the plays from the linebacker spot, and they're not doing it, especially situationally. That touchdown run from Joe Mixon, just no reason. Like Jalen Jones didn't play that particularly well, but there's no reason why a run up the middle should have gotten all the way to the outside corner, in that spot. But it did because EJ Speed got eaten up by a chop block, and Zaire Franklin just didn't get around it and basically blocked himself by not being decisive to chase that ball carrier down. And so that's one moment, but there's so many other moments where they just let guys loose in coverage. It felt like every time CJ Stroud was able to get away from the rush, there was a tight end to throw to or a running back to dump the ball down to. And it was always a linebacker, it felt like, who had assignment on that and just didn't get around to making it happen. And some of these were, some real chuck plays. So to be able to have a game where like Stephon Diggs gets hurt, Nico Collins isn't out there. Tank Dell, they held down for the first half, then he got kind of going the second half. It was like, and they got the pass rush. It was like so much of this was there for the defense they had a good enough day to win, but I thought they could have taken it to a little higher level of putting them in more spots to let that pass rush really eat for explosive plays or force balls into coverage. And there just were too many easy safety valves for CJ Stroud and too many drives where they didn't give up huge runs, but they gave up enough yards after contact and tough first down running for Joe Mixon that they didn't help the team out. Another moment where they need the linebackers to step up and be the guys to get this done, and I just don't think they did.
Yeah, on a day when Odangbo, Buckner, and Stewart combined for 6 tackles for loss, and we're pretty much wiping the floor with the middle of the Texans line for most of the game. Just Zaire Franklin getting washed out, honestly, a lot by blockers. EJ Speed the same, not great from the linebackers. Too much blame for today's loss. I'm going to go with the defense in general.
Yeah, that's fair.
I get it. The Colts defense is not good. They've not been good this season. They were pretty darn decent today. Not only did they give them chances, they also had to face 41 plays in the first half, which is just too many because their offense couldn't get anything going. They ended up, this will shock people, they ended up only giving up 96 yards rushing and 3.3 yards per carry. Pretty good. And in the pass game, they ended up with 6.8 yards per dropback, which is not great. It's also not bad. 7.5 is pretty good. This was the defense did its job. That's my basic point. Is the defense did its job today. They gave them plenty of chances to win. They only gave up one touchdown drive, and then most importantly, they gave the offense the ball twice with a chance to win the game at the end. The offense couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah, that's a fair one. It's really hard to find many others because we pretty fairly allocated the blame. So I guess if I have to pick one, I'll go Michael Pittman Jr. only because I saw some people who really felt like this is why I blame Shane Steichen for living this way. A lot of people felt like he should be doing a lot more because he is that number one guy. They paid him, and that's fair. And Pittman has owned it that there's certain things he could do better. But when I talked to him, the things he thought he could do better are related to rehab, the way he's managing his body, the way he's prepping his body, because right now that body it's just really limited. That's why they really were on the edge of putting him on injured reserve. And so he's kind of saved for moments. He should be kind of there for situational football, but it's a big reason why they should not be throwing 32 passes in a game. It's like he's not built to provide more than a couple in the right moments. And he had that offensive pass interference play that I thought, it was the right call because ultimately he kind of reaches out. He did engage the defender, but it was one of those it was just kind of a bad luck moment too, where he just didn't expect them to cross at that exact moment. He tried to do, it was just kind of a bad moment where he put his hands out and it happened. But I don't know. It was like Alec Pierce was going to be open on that play, so technically it could have worked, but only if the pressure hadn't been there. So it's like I don't know. It didn't ultimately impact it. So I don't know. I guess I'm just getting it like he isn't built to carry this team if they're going to pass a lot right now. There's got to be other ways to go right now. And Josh Downs had a terrific game, so there's one, but that's only one of their options. So I feel like the responsibility is falling on this player that is normally very fair for when he gets paid the way he does, the way he's produced. But again, the quarterback situation he's dealing with the health situation he's dealing with, I think they're asking too much out of him in the passing game as a whole for kind of what they're able to provide at this moment.
That brings us to the last two, and it's getting close. We're getting close to the airport, so we timed this out fairly decently. One to throw away and one to go on. We always start with one to throw away. What's one thing people are talking about right now that we're going to throw away as the season goes on?
That I'm going to bang the same drum, but I'm going to take a little different twist to it. So that Joe Flacco needs to play. I will say that I feel like the passing game that Shane Steichen is running is better for Joe Flacco than Anthony Richardson. That's been my frustration with him is he's running a Joe Flacco offense for Anthony Richardson to run. And so in that context, when you ask the same two guys to do the same two things that are built on drop back and throw a ton in a game, the veteran is going to be better than the young quarterback, and he would give him a better chance of winning. But again, this team's not good enough. Even if they had Flacco out there to play this way and win many of these games, maybe they would have won today. But again, like the sacks, the pressure that was on the quarterback, like he took 5 today, but I think we would have had some more with Flacco. So it's more that like people are not totally wrong when they're saying this about about the Flacco giving them a chance to win. The problem is the fix for that. I don't think is we'll play Flacco because he fits the coach's system better. The system has to change. The system has to get Anthony Richardson running more. And so, again, it's not an absolutely egregious take, but it also doesn't fit. Like everything about this season is still developing Anthony Richardson and evaluating him. And so people, I feel like the ones who are saying that, they're ready to just move on from him. That's fine if that's where you're at. I think it's just kind of makes the whole thing pointless at this point since they're not good enough of a team to do that and get anywhere real anyway. So that's why I would throw away. It's not that he couldn't help the passing game, just that's not how any of this was supposed to be built, and they got to fix the reasons why it's not going that way rather than just force somebody into a new kind of system that they've accidentally fallen into.
One to throw away for me. I don't think the defense has turned a corner. I'm sure no one's really saying that, but I know it feels like they're playing a lot better. I don't think that Texans team I don't think the Texans offense without Nico Collins is that good.
No, it's not. It's not explosive at all.
The offensive line is awful. It's truly awful. It's going to be what kills them eventually this season is that their offensive line is truly terrible. I think, next week they have Minnesota, but Darnold doesn't even really fit this. Like when they play the Lions and the Bills, but especially the Lions, I think you're going to see a lot of the weaknesses. We saw some of them from the corners today, Womack and mostly Womack today.
Yeah.
Struggling today, but when they play better offenses, they're going to have issues. The best thing they have going for them is that a lot of offenses in the NFL kind of stink this year. So that's why I wanted to throw away. That brings us to the last one to go on, something we're talking about right now that we'll be talking about the rest of the season. I'll let you go first. What's one to go on?
I mean, Anthony Richardson not being the passer people want him to be this year, and the passer that he's claiming to be right now when he says he's a great passer, it's just not. It isn't. It feels like it's not going to happen this year for him that way. I like this to me was a big game. It wasn't like I've been saying over and over. You don't just become magically accurate within that same season, like after 1 week of changes. But what can happen is a team can kind of conform its style to draw up a few easier baked in completions, but also like minimize the effect of that. Like you brought up with Jalen Hurts, is that when he did deal with some accuracy issues, though not this extreme, they were able to minimize how much he had to carry because of how much they wanted to run him. They just don't seem like they want to do it. I thought this was the perfect week to course correct when Shane Steichen came out last week and said, I've got to put him in better positions. They're not changing the positions they're putting him in. They're still going to hunt for explosives. They seem completely content with living with mistakes as long as they had some chance at an explosive. I think that's what that interception showed us. And so that's the environment Anthony Richardson's playing in. That's the environment that he's struggling in. I just think it's going to be the story this year until I'm not sure what exactly is going to change it. But if it didn't change this week, if this wasn't the week that you got out of all these high pressure rate situations and his dropbacks and hunting for explosives and leaned on the run, I'm not sure it's going to come. So until they actually show me that they're going to lean on Anthony Richardson's legs and that within a lower volume role, he can make some of these incremental improvements, but also be aware that he's not good enough right now, that he has to get better, and that this is his weakness. Until they prove that they know what the problem is, I just think the problem's going to remain.
Yeah, my one to go on is going to be right around along the same thing. I was thinking about doing Richardson as well, and my one to go on with Richardson is the Colts are not, at least as far as I can tell, nearly as close to giving up on Anthony Richardson as everybody in the national media would like you to believe, and as much as I think a lot of Colts fans are, like, they have stayed steadfast. Steichen has stayed steadfast. The players have stayed steadfast, and he's a young quarterback. We've got to let him go through this stuff. I know what the numbers are. I know how bad the numbers are and how bad it looks. It was really bad today. Somebody asked me and asked Joel, the thing I do on X Twitter that I increasingly regret ever making a thing. Is your concern level rising? Yes.